What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Cheeky Midweeky, where we are making strength and conditioning not boring anymore. And today we have a legend in the field of strength and conditioning. He works for the CSCCa right now, and we have a lot to unpack. The fact that he was the first strength coach in history for a Major League Baseball team. Coach Al Johnson, thank you very much for joining the show. There's a lot of other things you could be doing. Thank you for allowing us to learn from you.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Yeah, it's we talked off air for a while. Everybody that's joining us now. So Al and I have been talking for quite some time now. And when you look at what you've done and accomplished over your time, I want to start off with being the first strength coach ever for the Orioles. What are the challenges of being the first, and what are your recommendations for our listeners that are in a similar situation? Because we know it's happening nowadays with more and more jobs popping up.
Boy, great questions, Justin. Great questions. It takes me back quite a bit when I started. I was with the Orioles from 89 to 93. And I tell you what, it was at that time there were only two other strength coaches in all of baseball. One was with the White Sox, a guy by the name of Timmy Wilson with roots in Nebraska. And the other one was a guy by the name of what was it? His name was Wade Suggs. And there was two of them. So before I took the job at the Orioles, I reached out to him. I said, "Hey, what advice would you give me? I'm in uncharted waters here. What advice would you give?" And they said, "Well, first of all, you got to have a thick skin. You got to go in there with a thick skin because they're going to test you, and they're going to look at you like, wait a minute, you look like a truck driver. Why? What are you going to do for me? Are you going to help me lift the ball to the plate? Are you going to help lift the ball to the ballpark? Are you going to help me run the ball to the home plate?" But the biggest thing was just developing trust, which that's common. I mean, in anything you do, I mean, even today, building and developing trust. So when I went to spring training that first year, and you got to keep in mind, the only thing that they were required to do with me was some type of mobility, warm up, and conditioning. So strength was not even in the vocab with some of these players. They're like, lift what? I'm not lifting anything. Hey, I'm 35 years old. I haven't touched a weight plate or a weight piece of weight equipment my whole career, so I'm not touching it now. And so what was crazy, my first few days in spring training, I go there and we got a makeshift weight room in Sarasota, Florida, in this big open area. And so the first day or two was very interesting in the weight room in that, I'm like the Maytag repairman waiting for the dryer or the washer to break because I got like no customers. So I'm looking around. There's like 55 players invited to spring training for a 25-man roster. And so I'm sitting there and people, I see different guys walk around. They're leaving the clubhouse after our workout on the field. So about second, third day, I got 3 or 4 Hispanic players, a lot from the Dominican Republic. They started coming to my area. Of course, I don't speak Spanish, so I can't communicate with them. So they're picking up some of the dumbbells, and I'm trying to use hand gestures to work with them. And so the thing I knew that was, well, if I'm going to have a long shelf life at all here, I've got to get number 8. Some way I've got to get number 8, the shortstop, Cal Ripken Jr. I've got to get him on board. So I'm thinking, boy, if I approach him and I fail, I may never get another chance. So it was crazy. A few days, I got 5, 6, 8, 10 players. Again, mainly Hispanic players. They're coming in. They're intrigued, like, hey, what is this stuff? And so finally, maybe 2 weeks in, number 8 comes over. And he starts, just doing a little bit of some hand stuff, some grip stuff, some wrist forearm stuff. And I'm thinking, boy, I just can't try to go hard to sell him real quick because if I lose him, I'm done. And so I just, casually, hey, speak to him. So, he keeps coming in. So 2 or 3 days elapse. Finally, he starts asking questions. So I'm thinking, this is a good sign. So anyway, after that, Justin, after that day, when he started asking questions, all of a sudden it's like the dam broke loose. Players started coming in. So like at 53 guys in camp, I was averaging like 40 players a day after our on-field workout in the weight room. And so that was kind of the beginning. And it was what was really crazy coming from a college setting is to see, and before I got there, the trainer and or one of the third base coach, Carrick Sr., would lead the team in calisthenics before they would go to their drills. So I'm looking at this. I mean, they didn't know what dynamic nothing was. They didn't know what dynamic warm up was. They're like, what are you talking about? And so introduced that. And that was, they looked at me kind of curiously. Of course, they got on board. But just to give you an evolution, my first year went from 20, from about 14, 15 players that did something with me at least twice a week on the road or at home and some types of strength training. I went from the first year from 14, 15 to finally my last year, I had almost 25, I had almost 100% participation from the entire team. But it was tough. I mean, with the thing at that time, I had 6 minor league teams and the major league team by myself. So the program in the minor leagues was implemented. I would give it to the trainers, the minor league trainers. And so you got to keep in mind the minor league trainers, some of them washed the uniforms. They mopped the floors of the clubhouse, the home clubhouse. They arranged all the travel, all the per diem, and they treated injuries. And we added this 6th hat to them. Now they had to administer the strength program that I was sending them via fax at that time.
Yeah, you didn't have TeamBuildr or any of these things.
So every 16, 17 days, I'm getting a plane ticket handed to me to fly to meet or drive to meet a minor league team. And so then I would drive back, if it was within driving distance, to the major league team. And so, I remember one year we'd play the Mariners, and so that'd be fly from Seattle to Rochester, New York, a AAA team. And then after 48 hours, fly back to Oakland to meet the major league team, which was insane. So it was just crisscross. It was a great experience. I tell you what.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr has been my online software platform choice since 2019. Been using it at Towson, using it at Goldfinch, and use it with my online remote clients. You can learn more about them in the link down below. TeamBuildr is also part owner in the Plyomat, which will allow you to get quick, valid, and reliable jump data, jump height, ground contact time, and reactive strength index in just seconds. They are part owner of Plyomat, so you can check them out in the link down below as well.
One thing I can tell you it really taught me and really helped me as a strength conditioning coach, because I came from West Virginia University where I had 21 teams. I had one GA with 21 teams. We're talking back in the mid-'80s. Is it really taught me how to adjust and adapt in terms of program design, really designing programs, because I had players that, their experience with any type of strength training was very limited or none. I had some players that I had manual resistance, some I had on selectorized machines, some I had on free weights, some I had on cuff weights. And the other thing I learned, and it was an invaluable experience for me, was motivation. So some players, let's say, and again, you talk about a crazy, insane schedule. I mean, like, let's say a 7:30 first pitch, I might get to the ballpark at 1. So I got players from like 1 to 3:30, 1 to 4 that are training with me before the game starts, or pitcher or pitchers that pitch the day before, have them on a running program. So I'm there 5.5, 6 hours before the game. So the home team, let's say we're in Detroit, for example, they would give us a lot of time before BP to go over and utilize their facility. Okay, then after the game, so the game starts at 7:30, it's over at 10:30, 11 o'clock, I'm taking more players. So I'm taking players after the game into the home team's weight room. And then the next day, it all starts all over in the hotel. I'm meeting players at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm taking them to work out. Then I go eat lunch, go to the ballpark, 5.5, 6 hours for the game, and working more guys out. So it was a challenge. But in terms of talking about motivation, some players, I'd come into the clubhouse after a game, look at them, they'd look at me, I'd turn and walk away. Another thing I do, I'd look at my watch, I'd look at them, I'd turn and walk away. Some guys, I'd go up and I'd approach and I'd say, hey, it's been 72 hours since we got our last workout in with me. And they say, I'm not doing it. They're that baseball players, I'm talking about that time, I'm sure they still are now, very superstitious. Yep. So they say, I'm not coming in. I'm like, well, you know what? Tomorrow's the 31st of the month. I'm still getting paid tomorrow, whether you work out or not. And then sometimes what I do is I would use peer pressure. So I would go to another individual, another guy on the team, and say, "Hey, can you help me with Mike or whatever influence?" So what helped me as a coach, it really helped my as far as my skills, as far as motivation and motivating players. That was the biggest thing. But the challenge is the recommendations. Being a strength conditioning coach. I mean, it's now what's great. And I visited the Orioles here, probably 2 months ago. And so now the level of knowledge that most players coming in drafted in the organization or traded, coming to the minor league ranks, they're exposed to so much more. Obviously now in the minor league ranks, they all have strength conditioning coaches at each level. So that's a big change.
One of the things that I wrote down here when you talked about the dynamic warm-up was it's common now, but it wasn't then. Like how hard was it to implement something new? Because I know there's going to be strength coaches listening to this that maybe they're trying to do something new where they're at, and they can get some motivation, they can get some encouragement from you, because that had to be hard.
It was real hard, but you know what the key, and I think most coaches out there listening would know this. I mean, first of all, you got to be confident. You have got. I mean, you talking about you're going into an environment where a situation where you don't know no one in the organization. You're going in it. You don't know the trainer, you don't know the players, you don't know the GM, you don't know any of these people. So you're going in, but you have to be confident in your skill set. Number two, you have to make connections, whether it be eye contact or verbal connections with players. And once you start doing that, for me, it was successful, because then what happens is the leadership the cream rises to the top in terms of leadership, and coaches and players were helping me. But it was, at the beginning, there was a lot of they're very skeptical, cynic about, hey, what in this, what are we doing here? What is this? I've been in a professional baseball player for 9-10 years. We've never done this stuff. So why are we doing it now? So it was, for me, it's, and I think for any coach going into any new situation, you have to sell your program, you have to sell yourself, but you have to build that trust, and you have to communicate.
Speaking of communication and trust, the second thing that I wrote down when you talked about the 21 teams and the 1GA is, like, what are your thoughts about coach development and the ability to write programs nowadays if maybe they only have one team or two? Like, is it good? Is it bad? What are your thoughts about how it's evolved where coaches don't have as many teams nowadays versus when you first started?
Well, I think it's, when you talk about, obviously writing programs, and we all as coaches write programs, but I think when, think about it in the beginning, your diligence to sit down and really plan out, you're talking about, like I say in the beginning, had 21 teams in 1GA and had 3 weight rooms. And so the importance of sitting down and laying out and designing the program was, it's very, as it is even today, it's very important. But it wasn't, what's crazy, Justin? I didn't know what I didn't know. In terms of what I'm saying is that, the second year I got really smart. I took that GA and I cut it in half. So now I had 2 half GAs. And so, you know what? That was one of the dumbest things I ever did, because it literally killed the two guys. And so now, instead of them getting one guy getting $800 a month, they're each getting $400. So they were barely surviving at $400 a month. And it was tough. And so the best thing going to baseball, coming back, and leverage for me an opportunity to get 2 assistants, 2 GAs. And of course, during my second tenure there, I was able to expand the staff. But it's, I think, and it's healthy to, I hope coaches out there listening, I hope that they're seeking knowledge, because I think in this profession, I think you would agree. When you stop, regardless of where you're at in your journey, if you stop learning, you need to get out of the profession. If you think you've cornered the market on this or that or whatever, always, and sometimes you listen to coaches, and they're X amount of years into the profession, and you can tell just by their body language or their verbiage that they're tired, or they really are not as committed as they were 2 years before or 5 years before. Then that's bothersome, because the athlete's going to read you every day, and that's as a good strength coach, I think. Excuse me, I think a good strength coach has the ability each and every day to know through verbal communication or through body language, when an athlete walks into your facility, you're going to know basically just the basic parameters. You're going to know what kind of day they're going to have. What kind of effort am I going to get out of it? And you know them. And think about this. I don't think the strength conditioning coach, professional per se, has ever gotten the credit for, we're one of the few coaches that handles the entire team. Whereas if, let's take football, for example. Football, for example, you got a head coach, you got you got an offense, defense coordinator, now you got a plethora of assistant coaches, but there's only two people on that staff that are responsible for the whole team: strength conditioning coach and the head coach. And so what I'm saying is it's the importance of what you do, regardless of the size of the team you're working with. Man, don't ever underestimate or diminish your value to the program. Now, you may not get the kudos, you may not get the pats on the back, you may not, you're never going to get paid what you're worth. That's to be established. But I think that the impact you have more impact on athletes and one off season than most people will have on other people their entire lifetime.
Amen to that. Switching gears to when you talked about the second stint, you talked about being in college in West Virginia. You were, in the Sweet 16. What is the NCAA tournament like? Because I've never been. Some of our listeners never have. The Sweet 16, and how do athletes navigate school when they have this added pressure on them? Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, Hawkin Dynamics. I've had Hawkin Dynamics for multiple years, dating back to my time at Towson, and still utilize them here at Goldfinch when I'm training athletes in Iowa. Hawkin Dynamics makes it simple to be able to get input to find out what's going on underneath the hood with your athletes. Whether it's lower body assessment, upper body assessments, you want reliable data to find out how the athlete is putting force into the ground so you can be able to accurately return an athlete from an injury, and you can also find out how the athlete is producing force to check how your training is working. Check out Hawkin Dynamics in the link down below.
Great question. I tell you what, the one and only time, like I work with basketball, both basketballs, baseball and football. Those are my four teams that I try to put more hands on. I was with all teams, but those are the four I put focal point. In terms of the Sweet 16, the one and only time that I ever traveled with the basketball team in my entire career at West Virginia, they qualified for the Sweet 16. And so with that opportunity, I mean, it's a fun time because it's obviously a reward for the season, but it's also an intense time because once you get once you get that far, as your journey begins in the Sweets in the NCAA tournament, one and done. If you lose, you're done. But just the opportunity to get that far, and then at the time you don't realize, hey, we're one of the top 16 teams in the country, and it does after the fact, you look back and you think, boy, this is a great opportunity for the program, for the players, for the team, and secondarily for me as a strength conditioning coach. But it was in terms of just like the Sweet 16, it was an experience where we weren't expected to win. So every game that we won was going through the tournament, it was a bonus. And it was a thing where, and that's probably why we had success, because we weren't very stressed. We weren't tight. Players played, had fun, beat a couple teams we shouldn't have, and it just evolved that way. And it was really, really an unbelievable experience. In fact, what's crazy, if you don't mind me telling a story, we played in Boise, Idaho. We played at Boise State's arena, and so. I'm a facilities guy. I'm a guy that likes to get out, I like to meet strength conditioning coaches, facilities. So I venture, and you're talking 1997, I venture over to Boise State to see the Smurf turf. I want to see the blue turf. I want to see what it looks like. So I'm wandering through their facility. I don't know who the strength coach is. I don't know who the assistant strength coach is. The strength coach at the time at Boise State was Joe Ken. Oh. The assistant strength coach was Rich Gray. And so we were there for 72 hours, and then we got eliminated out of the Sweet 16, going to the Final 8. But the thing was, I went in and met these guys. Had never met them before. Probably maybe talked to them maybe on the phone. But what was really cool is they were testing their football team at that time when I was there, and they asked me, say, "Hey, coach, do you want to jump in here and help us test these guys?" said, what? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm good with that. If you guys want, if you need the extra hand, so they set up a light system, almost like a powerlifting meet, like a red light, white light, and so they did a test. So I was there with them for 2 days. In fact, missed one of the practices for the Sweet 16. Missed a practice. So everyone's like, "Where you been? What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I was over at Boise State, and and I said, I lost time, so I was over there helping test their football team." But that's life's journey. But that's the fun part. That was the fun part. But being there and being part of that. But that's with school. When you talk about school, I mean, we had tutors, we had academic people that traveled with us. And it was, it was an easy lift. And it was time, during that time, we dedicated our coaching staff, our head coach at the time was Gail Catlett, West Virginia, dedicated the time daily for academics. I mean, nothing trumped that. So, from what I saw, looking at it, it's very relatively easy.
Okay, so you talked about being in the top 16, but you also have been number one when you were at Ohio State. You've won a national championship, a BCS national championship. What is that like?
It's insane. It's insane. It's going from a small fishbowl to a large fishbowl.
Really?
And I tell you what, the scrutiny, the measuring stick. Obviously, as people listening know this, with the Ohio State Michigan rival, every day we had a countdown clock in our weight room and in our locker room, and we traveled with we traveled with both clocks to every game we played. One was just a Michigan clock, and one was the team that week, whether Michigan State, Minnesota, etc. And it was, I tell you what the different people ask me, what is the difference between the football players that you work with at West Virginia compared to Ohio State? Well, I said the difference is every freshman coming into Ohio State expected to be going in 3 years and to play on Sundays. That was the expectation. I mean, especially the ones that are scholarship players. But it was. But on the flip side, very motivated athletes. There wasn't a lot of development. I mean, there was some development, but not as much so as what I had to do at West Virginia because we weren't getting 4 and 5 star athletes. I enjoyed that experience probably more so just because the athletes to me seemed more driven and hungrier, had a chip on their shoulder because they weren't as highly recruited. The athletes I was getting at Ohio State. I mean, this will probably sum up the difference between West Virginia and Ohio State. West Virginia in my first 7 years, I had 2 athletes in 7 years, vertical jumps, no step, 40 inches in the vertical. My first day at Ohio State, I had 4 players, vertical jump, 40 plus inches. I mean, I was astounded. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I retested those kids. I was there. I said, there's no way. This has got to be an error. And turned to one of my assistants. I said, you know what? I think you've made a mistake here. So had him take another jump. I mean, but but the challenges, I mean, and you look at this year's team. I mean, Ohio State, I mean, there's a lot of NIL money. There's a lot of, what do they call it, the $20 million team. Yeah. And it's the pressures that go on there. And, of course, Coach Mickey Marotti does a tremendous job. I'll tell you how old I am, Justin. Mickey was a GA for me at West Virginia.
What?
Yes, he came in the fall of '88. I was with him for 3 months, and then I went to the Orioles. And so I was with him for 3 months.
Wow.
He came to West Virginia. I could not give him any money. All I could give him was another master's degree. So he had already obtained a master's degree at Ohio State, and now came to West Virginia to get a second master's degree. He couldn't find a job. And so that's how our relationship, friendship has evolved.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of the pressures of Ohio State, like you kind of teased it right there. I have a colleague that's presented Inside Strength Coach Network on it. Not on this topic, but he's presented on Olympic lifting. Zach Higginbotham, he worked at Ohio State, and he explained it to me. He said it's like he goes, every day is 4th and goal from the 3-yard line. like every day is that pressure. Does that sum it up?
Oh yeah, there's no question. And in 5 years at Ohio State, we got beat by Michigan one time. And I want to tell you what, for the next 365 days, self-induced, not pressure from Jim Tressel, but you felt like, you know what, we got something to prove. That should never happen. And so, and like I was telling you, alluding back to the countdown clock, let me tell you how crazy it was. The day after we played Michigan, whether it be home or away, on Sunday after the game, be with the family in the car going to church. I'd say, hey, I got to stop for a second. I need to run the facility real quick. I would go in, reset the countdown clock for 365 days for the next year. I mean, and I'm consciously doing that, not really, just saying, hey, I got to make a stop here. And I would do that. And then our players would come in, after the Michigan game, the first week was a discretionary week, so they wouldn't have to do much after that game. You see players come in and boom, they immediately look at the clock, and the countdown clock is how many days, hours, and seconds till we played Michigan the next year.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, Vitruve VBT. With Vitruve, you can accurately measure what speeds your athletes are moving the bar. No longer do you have to program simply based on sets and reps. You can program for your more mature athletes based on the velocities that they are hitting. You can accurately measure at a great price with Vitruve, and you can have this integrate with your TeamBuildr, making it simple so you no longer have to write down the recorded reps from other devices. Everything in one place with Vitruve VBT. Check them out in the link down below.
So you talk about intensity, you talk about, just being on point and having a goal and the pressures of big time football.
Okay, so being devil's advocate, let's say, like I just thought about this when hearing you talk about it. Let's say one of our listeners is hearing that and they're like, okay, that's good and all, but how do you handle that dichotomy of wanting to be your own best self, regardless of whether it's Ohio State or Michigan, versus like, hey, if we just focus on us and being the best us and focusing on that process, the outcome of beating the opponent will take place versus, hey, we want to beat this opponent. Like, how do you handle that dichotomy? What are your thoughts?
You know what? It was set, the precedent was set by the leader, by Jim Tressel. We never said the word Michigan ever. We never said we would say the school up north. But the thing was, our whole thing was measuring ourselves against ourselves.
Gotcha.
Our whole thing, and the thing was really, really neat to see it in motion. If a player got hurt, let's say your starting right guard got hurt, there was never panic in terms of, wow, this is an all-conference guard. What are we going to do? It's next man up. But the whole focus of the entire time I was there was on us. And how can we get better? What do we need to get better? Gotcha. And then that clock was just something as a reminder, to think about, hey, I got to make every second, every hour count when I'm supposed to be working.
That makes sense. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, you were in the BCS era, and you've seen the CFP4, now there's the CFP12. What are your personal thoughts on somebody that lived through the BCS and has now seen and helped work with and educate current strength coaches that live in the 4 and then now the 12 world?
Yeah. Back in the era of the BCS, you're talking about it's not that long ago, but now you're talking about 2 teams. You could barely stub your toe. If you lost a game, losing a game, maybe you could get in the BCS. Maybe you could get in the championship game. Maybe. No guarantee.
Hoping to be the 2 seed.
Yes, hoping to be the 2 seed.
Because you knew you weren't going to be the 1 seed. You just had to hope to be 2.
Exactly. And the pressures of trying to get into that game. We could have won the Big Ten, lost a game, and still not got into the national championship. And that was, it was at that time you're looking at, geez, why aren't they expanding? You're talking about back in the early 2000s, why aren't we expanding the playoffs? Because, every team has a bad day, so to speak, and it doesn't mean that they're not worthy, but hey, that day they weren't good enough. And as a result, they're eliminated. I think the 4-game college football playoff has been good because it's given more teams opportunities. You don't have to be perfect to get in that. But now what I like about the 12 team is that, you're kind of spreading the wealth. You're getting more of a sample size of a cross section of teams throughout the country. Yeah. I think that the only fly in the ointment that I'm hearing, especially my travels this fall, talking to strength conditioning coaches with football, is the concern the playoffs going into late January.
Yes.
So now the question becomes like, okay, you've got, what is it still? I believe it's still 8 discretionary weeks off a year.
Yeah.
Now that window for you to get those 8 weeks in before fall camp starts in August are much shorter. Also, when you start spring ball. So now if let's say, and again, people out there are going to say, well, hey, there's only 2 teams in national championship, but the weeks leading up, I mean, my time in terms of recovery, the recovery to get ready for spring football, and or my window to train and get our players ready to go into spring football is shortened. But I really worry and concerned about the recovery aspect of finishing a game. Let's say we're eliminated on the 14th of January. School starts on the 18th. They need time off. I mean, they need time off, and
especially after that long of a season.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough. I like the 12-team playoff, but I just don't like the length of time. I don't like the thought of we're doing what's best for the safety and health of the athlete. When I think extended playoffs, you're not talking about the health and safety and the academic concerns of the student athlete.
I'll tell you what I would love to see is spring ball go away. Personally,
look, hey, it's become flag football. I mean,
let's just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Let's just train.
Or you know what? Division III, I think, has the right arena. I mean, they're not allowed to wear any pads at all, and they go out, and I think they do. They go through teamwork, etc. Blah blah blah, but there's no contact.
Yeah.
I mean, and you think about it, I mean, look at some of the great Division III programs. I mean, like your Mount Unions of the world and your St. John's out of Minnesota years and years and years ago. Now the bully on the block is North Central out of Illinois. Yeah. And so those guys don't have spring ball. So it's interesting to watch the dynamics.
You know what? We're going to table that. We are going to dive into that later. So you were another question that I had here for you was playing and beating the U back when they were the U, because nowadays like people they want to say the U is back, but like you and that staff, like it's been on a 30 for 30, but like what was that like? Again, you were just surrounded in a world where talent was so much more localized because there wasn't as many schools. Like what was that experience like?
It was incredible. It was. I tell you what. I mean, in Miami, that the year 2001, we were fortunate enough to win that. 2002, win that national championship. They were coming off a national championship.
Yep.
They were coming. I mean, they were loaded. The year we played them and got a chance to beat them in overtime. They had 17 kids off that team that got drafted in NFL. I mean, and that game, if you remember, I mean, the stars aligned. There's a controversial play.
Remember I remember the whole thing.
Controversial play, but it was a thing where there was, we were fearful. I'm going to be honest with you. We were fearful of their speed. I mean, we had some speed. We didn't have that kind of speed. We didn't have that kind of skill set across the board. I mean, we had skilled athletes, obviously, but it was a challenge, and it was a thing. The thing going into that game was physically, a team had not gone toe to toe with them physically the entire season. In 60 minutes of I'm not talking about spreading the ball all over the field. I'm talking about lining up and pounding the ball on them. And we thought if we could do that successfully, we'd have a chance. And not that we were going to win, but we'd have a chance. And and then the stars lined up. I mean, it was incredible. And you know what? I don't know, people out there listening. Myself personally, I can tell you, I enjoy the journey more than I do the destination, because I know after that game, your mind and this is probably not the right mindset, but after that game, I'm already thinking about the off-season program. I mean, you're happy, but it's a short-lived happiness, because you're thinking, okay, in 3 weeks, we're cranking it up again. And so, like I say, as a strength conditioning coach, I've always enjoyed the journey. It's always been the process, the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, more so than the destination. I mean, the destination obviously is your goal, but the journey to get to the destination is what motivated me as a strength coach.
Good for you with that. You talked about talent. Y'all had a ton of talent there too. And one of the people that I remember, I was in high school. I remember being intrigued by the Maurice Claret. He's a sophomore, or he was a freshman. He was talented. It was at the time that LeBron James went pro from high school to pro. What is your, like, how do you handle a case like that where there's a young talent? Can that be applied to the NIL stuff nowadays? Like, in your hindsight, I mean, that's over 20 years ago now. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Maurice was you talk about a very blessed, talented human being. I mean, he comes in as a freshman. I mean, he's almost 215-pound tailback. He graduates from high school early, so he comes in December.
Oh my god!
And I remember one of the early games we played his freshman year was against Washington State. The strength conditioning coach was a guy, a longtime legend in our field, Rob Oviatt.
Yeah.
And so Rob, I remember after that game, Maurice rushes for 2 touchdowns, about 155 yards. Rob made the comment that I've never seen a freshman tailback in my entire career. And he'd been at LSU and in various places. I've never seen a tailback. I've never seen a running back like this. He goes, I'd never seen anybody like that. But Maurice, was an interesting individual in terms of, he was so blessed. He was so ahead of his age group growing up the entire process. He was always head and shoulders above. And it was one of such with when he got to Ohio State, the biggest thing was keeping him on task, keeping him, on point as to what you wanted him to do to work. I mean, he was a good worker. This kid could have played 10 years in the league. I really think he could have played 10 plus years in the league. But I think what happened is I think that he got, along the way, probably got too satisfied. And NIL money, he would have broke the bank.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, Sleep Me. Sleep Me are the makers of the Chili Pad, which has been my bed cooling device since 2020. Chili Pad will allow you to sleep and not wake up hot anymore. This was something that I had to worry about. I used to have the air conditioning down way too low. Now, I don't have to have the air conditioning as low because my Chili Pad, my Dock Pro, keeps my bed cold at night. Check out Sleep Me, check out the Chili Pad, check out the Dock Pro in the link down below.
He would have been a guy that would have broke the bank. But I'm just saying he was so far ahead of his time when he was young, when he was young coming in. But he was an extraordinary talent.
Yeah, because I remember reading in ESPN the magazine, like that'll show my age. I remember the ESPN the magazine, how big their magazine was compared to Sports Illustrated, and it was a feature on Maurice Claret where like he got a phone call in the middle of the interview from LeBron James. Like again, it was just like, yeah, I mean, wow, like that is way ahead of the time.
Oh yeah, way connected and I tell you what, today, he's very successful. He's written a couple books.
Oh, awesome.
And he travels. He does a lot of motivational speaking. He does some things in collaboration with Coach Trussell. They do a couple of things together. They've done some things together, but he's probably one of the most phenomenal talents that I was ever blessed to have the opportunity to work with.
Moving on to now with the CSCCA, let's talk about kind of the origins of the CSCCA and the SCCC certification.
The organization started in our first national conference was in 2001. First 7 years of our association were in Salt Lake City. Our founder was a guy by the name of Chuck Stiggins, Dr. Chuck Stiggins. He was a strength conditioning coach at BYU for decades.
Really?
And then taught there. Lived in Provo. And so the first 8 years we would go to Salt Lake City for a national conference. And Chuck's, in terms of his vision, there are 25 of us back in 2000 that went to Las Vegas. And, we were all, you're skeptical about, going to form this new organization, because we had another organization we belonged to. And it was like, there's 25 of us that just took a leap of faith to go listen to what the proposed plan was to formulate this organization for collegiate strength and conditioning coaches. Something that was be a little bit more exclusive and more pertinent to our needs and our population. And so from that, our first national conference was in 2001. We had about 100, 115 coaches who attended. And so slowly it evolved and picked up steam. And what's crazy, I mean, it was a tough, I'll tell you what, be honest with you, it was a tough decision to leave the other organization to join this because we were in uncharted waters. Didn't know if it's even going to fly, if it's going to happen. And the biggest thing was, is there any type of certification in place? I mean, those of us who were thinking about leaving the other organization and having dual membership was, is there any type of certification? And he assured us that there would be and created a certification, which is, now is probably one of the most robust certifications in the country. I mean, you look at, and if people are not familiar with our certification, I mean, first of all, you got to do a 640-hour internship. Yep. You have to do a written test, at a mobile site. And then the third thing, you have to do a practical where you sit in front of 3 master strength and conditioning coaches and you justify program, going into maybe a 6 or 8 week program, off season, in season, preseason, in a sport that's selected prior to they get to the conference. But then they have to demonstrate practical skills to be able to demonstrate lifts. And so it's a very, very robust experience. The thing that I think that really separates, the 2 things that separates is obviously the practical, but the other thing is the 640-hour mentorship, where they get hands-on experience with a collegiate master strength conditioning coach. And that's been big. We have, going forward, I mean, we have a lot of, we're evolving in terms of different initiatives to increase our population, to improve the value for our membership. I think we've done a tremendous job the last 3 years. 2 things. One, we're listening to our membership. We're listening to them. And I'm not throwing shade at, Dr. Stiggins and his wife, Becky, at all. But there's more of us now. There's 7 of us that are in-house in terms of that run the day-to-day. And then we have a 9-member board of directors that are very active. They're more active now than they've been the last 24 years, which is awesome. But like for example, speakers. Like last year, we had 57 speakers at our national conference. And so what we do, we have a committee that vets all the applications. We give them the topics that our membership. We surveyed our membership. Say, hey, what topics do you want presented at the national conference? What do you want? So we listen to that and incorporate that. Then we send the topics to the speaker committee. There's 5 coaches from around the country, and then they give us their recommendations. And so then, we plug them in to be speakers. And so now what we've done, I think, like I say, I think we've done a better job. We've given more ownership to the membership, which, I think in the past we did some, but nowhere near to what we're doing now.
Anybody that listening at home, 640 divided by, so that would be, a semester, 16 weeks, 40 hours a week, or it would be, 20 hours a week spread out across 2 semesters. So if you're a young strength coach, because we have young strength coaches listening, like the sooner you can start interning and the sooner you can start doing this and figuring out if this is what you want to do. And there's a list of the approved mentor strength coaches. I was a mentor strength coach and I was the head strength coach at Towson for 5.5 years. So like there is a database where you can find and you can do this and you can excel your career.
And Justin, you bring up a great point too. Let's say the young strength coaches out there thinking about, geez, I want to be a football strength conditioning coach. Well, now, I mean, in the last 5 to 8 years, you can only have 5 total people working with football. So you're talking about the head strength conditioning coach plus 4 assistants. So what's happened? It's eliminated the GA.
Yep.
So now, like what you say, I mean, the internship, man, is so valuable. I know as a strength conditioning coach, I'm sure you were the same way. I'm looking at that resume. I'm looking at your resume as a potential candidate for an assistant position, or even, let's say, if you had GA positions in Olympic sports, I'm looking to see where their experience is at. So then I look at, they were at Towson State, they were at West Virginia, High State, et cetera. Then you start connecting the dots to say, hey, I know, Justin's at Towson, Mickey's at Mickey Marotti's at High State, Al Johnson, West Virginia. So then you connect the dots. Now I can reach out. Hey, what kind of work habits? What kind of person?
Mm-hmm.
What did they do? So I think, I think that it's important to do internships. I mean, again, it's it's, you got to bite the bullet. In most cases, you're not getting paid a dime. But if you think about people that have had longevity in this profession, they have sacrificed for the future. You sacrifice. I mean, it may be tough. You may have to go through a couple of years like, geez, I'm not, I'm barely getting by, and I'm volunteering. But what happens? It pays off 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Amen to that. And I would not be the strength coach that I am if I didn't have my internship at Harvard University and at my internship, with Doyle at Iowa. Like, that was able to help me, and it was an expedited, mini camp to being a head strength and conditioning coach. So like it's just part of what coaches have to do. It's part of the rite of passage, like you said, because it really does help you understand, like, hey, is this what I want to do? And it's something that when you can do exactly that, because the reason I was able to get hired at Maryland was Drew Wilson and Alan Weber, who worked at Maryland. They knew they were able to they had contacts at both Iowa and at Harvard. Drew called Doyle because Drew was looking for somebody and Doyle recommended me. But then Drew also went to school with Tim Mullen, who was my guy at Harvard. So it's like when you can, and that's where coaches, if you're listening to this, you're interviewing every single day. Every day that you're showing up, you are interviewing for your future job. So that way your current supervisor or whatever, they don't have to speculate. Oh, I think so-and-so will do this. No, they know because you've showed it day after day.
Taking a quick break from the show to talk to you about one of our sponsors, Powerlift. Powerlift is located here in Iowa in the United States of America. I've utilized them back in 2011 when I had them at Harvard. I also had them at the University of Maryland, and then finally when I was at the University of Iowa. Their equipment is strong, it is durable, it is dependable. It's also customizable based upon whatever your needs are at your school. Check out Powerlift at the link down below.
Yeah, your body of work is on display every day. And it comes down to networking relationships. It comes down to those two things.
Amen. Well, what about the MSCC? Like, what does it mean for coaches when they get that jacket? Like, what have been some things that they say? Because it's, it looks like a very special. There's the ceremony. There's the class induction. It seems very serious in a way of it should be, because it's a career recognition.
I tell you what, it's a thing where, when you become a master level strength conditioning coach and you're voted on, there's a committee that votes on, people apply to be a master strength conditioning coach, and their application and information they send is vetted.
Yep.
And they have to have at least 12 years in the profession. And with that, at our conference, the highlight of our entire conference is the second day, the night of the second day, where we have a dinner, where we honor, and we have a jacket presentation. They come forward, where we introduce them one by one. We bring them up on stage and we introduce them as a master strength coach. And then, now, you're talking about close to 500 people in the audience. And in the thing, we've streamlined that thing. Where in the past, I don't know if you've had the chance to ever attend, it might be 3 hours. Yeah. So now we've streamlined that to where our goal is 90 minutes or less. And so we'll have anywhere from 18 to 23 master strength coaches a year. But the thing I can tell you, until you've had the opportunity to get that jacket and receive that distinction,
yep,
from that point on, the perception of you as a strength and conditioning coach is different from the outside looking in, from your administrators, from your sport coaches. It's different because they look at you. And the thing I always tell inductees, you get a chance to talk to them, like, you don't understand right now, but you will. But your life in terms of a professional will never be the same. And I mean that in a very positive way, because, like I say, the way you're looked at, the way you're respected, and the way you carry yourself, but the professionalism of the entire honor is right there. And it's something that, if you spend 3 more years in the profession, whatever it may be, that's something that can never be taken away from you.
Amen to that. Is there anything else that, came to your mind that you wanted to talk about that we didn't address on this? Because I've had an absolute blast. I got some awesome notes here, but I want to leave you with a closing thought, to have the last word, say whatever, last piece of advice to any strength coaches listening to this, because we have coaches, high school, college, pro, tactical, private sector, old, young, GA, whatever it is, an opportunity to kind of speak to everybody.
the thing that resonates with me is this: is one is the path of least resistance is not always the best.
Ooh.
And what I mean by that is, with our certification, I mean, you're talking about you got to jump through 3 hoops. 3. You're not jumping through 1, you're jumping through 3.
Technically 4 between the internship, the in-person, writing the program, and then displaying your exercise technique. Right?
Yeah, true. But it's such that I think that, and just in my opinion, is that you have a chance to be you're more seasoned, you're more prepped in terms of with our certification to be prepared to go into a job. And I think that strength conditioning coaches per se look at those things and look at all the trials and tribulations and all the difficulties and the tough things that you've had to go through. I want, myself as a strength conditioning coach, I wanted someone who is not afraid of adversity or afraid of challenges. Someone who's willing to work and go the extra mile. And so, like I say, don't always, the path of least resistance is not the best. It may be the easiest, but think about that when you're thinking about getting your certification. The thing is that, like I mentioned before, the thing when we're doing a better job of it, and we're a work in progress. We're not, we haven't cornered the market. Hey, rah, hey, we're the best. But the thing is, we're listening, and we're trying to increase the number one thing that we're trying to do is increase the value for our membership. I mean, where we're at now compared to 3 years ago is immense. Are we where we're going to be? No. Are we headed in the right direction? Yes. But we can see that in terms of our numbers, we're trending upward in terms of our national conference. That's kind of the barometer. It's growing. It's come out of COVID. Almost 1,500 coaches in Fort Worth this past May. We go to Indianapolis in 25. We go to Fort Worth in 26. We go to Milwaukee in 27. So we're continuing to look at an upward trend. And the thing is, we are a nonprofit organization. We're not a profit organization. And our whole thing with our national conference, it's a break-even proposition. We're not making gazillions of dollars, off our national conference. So we're making sure our key thing is to put on a quality product and provide a quality product for the members. This is not my organization. This is their organization. This is you as a member. This is your organization. So with that being said, we want you to, if you've never been to the conference, you don't even have to be a member of the CSCCa to attend the conference. First and foremost, you can pay the registration and come to the conference. And that within itself, the things that the positives in terms of networking and relationships and friendships and broadening your horizons. And we have broadened our scope of presentations. I mean, we're delving more, becoming more science-based, more research-based, and more practical application-based. So we're providing those things for our membership. But I would say this, anyone listening out there, keep an open mind and really look and delve deep into see what we have, see what we've got.
Yeah, and anybody listening to this, I was at the CSCCA in Dallas most recently. I've been a CSCCA certified coach since 2023 when I was at Maryland. Going to be going to Indianapolis in 25. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and we're going to be raffling away anybody listening. I'm teasing it now, but as it gets closer to May, so February, March of 2025, at Strength Coach Network, we're going to be giving away a free admission to the CSCCA. So, we will pay for you to go because that is how important we know it is to go to these things. So, look for that. That'll be coming. Right now it's September, so give us about 5 months. When we get closer to the event, that'll be given away. We'll raffle that off. But Coach Johnson, thank you very much for joining us and explaining to us and educating us, because we cannot move forward with our future if we really don't understand our history.
No question. And history, history is important to find out where our roots are, where we came from, and where we want to go.
Amen, Coach. Thank you very much. You have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much. Take care.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.